Hi everybody, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and I thought I would show the records I'd acquired in the last month or so. What month did we just finish up? April. We're just starting May, aren't we? Okay, so the records I got in April. What are we listening to in the background? Uh, I recommended this as a great and inexpensive album on the thread that's going around about the quarantine edition of the Vinyl Tag. Ricky Lee Jones, her debut album. This is side two, starting off with Danny's All Star Joint. You just can't beat this album. And I'm real pleased this plays well. I used to have like 3 or 4 copies of this, including the one I had from way back when. I don't know where they all are. This is the only one I can find. I know I've shared it with other people uh, fairly often, so maybe that's it. Maybe they're tucked away in a crate somewhere. Have mislocated. Who knows? But anyway, Ricky Lee Jones, self-titled, just a great album. She wrote all the songs herself. What a great artist. She's got some good stuff since then too, both immediately after in the 70s and into the 80s, and her most recent album is really good as well. Okay, so things I picked up. Obviously, we're in a stay-at-home mode right now, so I haven't been to any record stores or gone crate digging in any thrift stores or anything, but I picked up several things from DISCOGS. DISCOGS is kind of like hard drugs. If you're not careful, you'll get addicted and it'll cost you a fortune. I usually buy several records at one time to cut down on the cost of shipping, but when I saw this pop up, it was on my want list. I went ahead and got that, and I even violated several of my rules. The person had never sold a record on Discogs. He had this, I made him an offer on it, and he took it. We worked our way through the transaction. He really didn't know how to, do all the sales stuff as far as invoicing and getting his money from PayPal and stuff, but we got through it. And I got this record, and it's a great record. Norman Blake and Tony Rice, Rice and Blake it's called, and it's on Rounder Records, of course. Just a great record. Put it up here because I've cleaned all my records, haven't played them all. Here are the ones that I have played. Recently I did something on Townes Van Zandt, and I showed this album. I've got the original Tomato, but upon playing it, Loretta, side 1, track 1, has got a repeat in it. It keeps repeating itself. It gets hung. I don't know where that came from, just out of the blue, man. Because I had this album since the late 1970s, probably, the Tomato release. But this is on Fat Possum. I found it at a good price from Fat Possum. I said, well, I got to have that Townes Van Zandt Flying Shoes so that I could play it. So I'll keep the Tomato records, but I'll play this one when I want to, when I want to hear some Townes. I also got For the Sake of the Song, which I used to have on cassette, I believe, but never had on vinyl. And there's For the Sake of the Song, Townes Van Zandt, which I believe was his first album, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a 2007 reprint from Fat Possum also. And I believe it's Dave at Local Bandography, I believe is his channel. Lives up in the Charlotte area or something. He's a big jazz fan. And so I kept hearing him reference this guy, Pharoah Sanders. And this is on Teresa Records. It's Pharoah Sanders live. Walter Booker, John Hicks, and something Mohammed. I can't read that first name. But I picked this up just based on hearing and I've heard others talk about Pharoah Sanders too, but that's the one that stands out in my mind is David. And this is on, like I said, Teresa Records. and it's a 1982 release, it looks like, but I bought this brand new, as were those Townes Van Zandt records. They were brand new sealed records. Okay, and found on Discogs from two different sellers. Well, those are from Discogs too, but two different sellers these came from. Most of them, though, came from Philadelphia Records or Philadelphia Music or something like that on in Discogs. It's a record store in Philadelphia, and that's not the name of the record store, the physical record store, the brick and mortar store, but that's what they go by on Discogs. And I've bought from them a lot. I find a lot of really good stuff from them. And when I was checking, lo and behold, they had slashed prices on a lot of their records. And say like as of April 15th, reduced price. And I found most of these records for a very low price. Now, what I was actually looking for, I had a tragedy in my basement not 10 years ago, a little less than 10 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, in which a lot of my records were ruined because they were on a bookcase against a corner wall in my basement. And after a couple of hurricanes and my dehumidifier stopped working, and me not knowing it down here in the basement for a long time, mold, mildew just decimated my S's. And I haven't always been sure what S's I had to throw out. Some of them I didn't lose, but a lot of them I did. Didn't realize it until recently, but this was one I'd had to throw out. Ricky Skaggs, Sweet Temptation. This is Sugar Hill record. This is kind of his breakthrough record. Just before he got on, I believe it was Epic Records, and really took off nationally or commercially. This album came out, and it was kind of the album that was the precursor to the country radio Ricky Skaggs music. Saw him on tour a lot during this period and that early period with Epic. But this is just a really good album. It's got Emmylou Harris, Tony Rice, Jerry Douglas, Albert Lee, Bobby Hicks, Tony Brown, Sharon Hicks and Cheryl White. Sharon ended up being his wife, I do believe. Emery Gordy. Just excellent album, and I was able to pick this up for next to nothing. And so whenever I do that, at that particular site on Discogs, they offer $5 no matter how many records you buy. So go crazy. And most of the records I got from them were $1.15, $1.69, two odd numbers, $2.28, $3.30, but most of them were like less than $2. Let's see. Now, this is from the other Discogs seller from Chicago I got. Yardbirds, Shapes of Things, a collection of classic Yardbirds recordings from 64 to 66. And I believe this is from Philadelphia. If I'm not mistaken, Dan Hicks and the Hot Licks did just this record on Epic before going on and with a different record label. I can't remember which label it was right off the top of my head. I've got those other records, but I don't think I have this Epic, so I got this for next to nothing. Original recordings. Now, it's got the top covers come apart, but gosh, what a minor thing. Jackie DeShannon, Your Baby is a Lady. I'm just really interested in her music. Early 60s, she was a pretty big star. This is some a little bit latter day work, 1974. But there's a video of her appearing on one of those dance shows from the early 60s, similar to Dick Clark. I don't believe it was Dick Clark, but similar to Dick Clark. And it'll just blow you away. You hear her singing and just her presence is just overwhelming. Leon Russell, Stop All That Jazz. I've got most Leon Russell stuff. This is one I didn't have. It's no Ricky Lee, just man, that's some good stuff. Arlo Guthrie, I got a lot of Arlo Guthrie, but I didn't have this Arlo Guthrie with Shenandoah, Outlasting the Blues, it's called. Look at that afro. Nobody sports an afro like a white guy in the 1970s, early 60s, or late 60s and early 70s. You know, you really have to have a lot of confidence to do that. Then a lot on the brother duos. I've got my last installment coming up. I haven't put it together yet, but believe me, these guys will be featured. It's the golden hits of the Everly Brothers. Brother duos singing those close harmonies, blood harmonies, some people call them. We talk a lot about Texas singer-songwriters. Here's one that could really rock out as well, Joe Ely, and this is Lord of the Highway. This is an album I didn't have. I've got several of his albums, but it's one I didn't have. Look forward to listening to that one. I also have a lot of Taj Mahal, and this is Happy Just to Be Like I Am. And, you know, the jacket's in rough shape. The record cleaned up very good. Josh White, talk about blues player Josh White, about Josh White Jr. And this is on Vanguard Records, and this is from 1978. This is Josh White's son, Josh White Jr. And I'm trying to get all the Doc Watson that I have pretty much all of it on album or CD. I'm trying to get everything on vinyl. The ones I have on CD only, I'm trying to get on vinyl. And so there's Doc and the Boys. I believe this was taken at when I lived in Blowing Rock, North Carolina, was Clyde's Restaurant. For a short period of time while they were building the concert hall on PB Scott's across the parking lot. This was PB Scott's originally. We used to go into Clyde's. I worked in the restaurant just across the parking lot from Clyde's. And then also the other way across the rest of the parking lot was PB Scott's. Doc and Merle. And there's Joe Smothers, band duo I used to go see a lot, Smothers and Lawrence, when I lived up there. The Doc Watson Family album, that's got his father-in-law, his wife, his brother, a lot of family members playing on it. That's on Folkways. And Doc and Merle Watson's guitar album, that's on Flying Fish, great label. Now, from my childhood, there was a local morning show that Hummer Briarhopper did, and it went by a couple of different names over the years, Sunrise Show or something along those lines, but it was Hummer Briarhopper's show anyway. But one of the guys that was for many years worked with him on that show was a fellow that had played in very early Bill Monroe Bluegrass Boys configuration before Flatt and Scruggs got with them. Had a hit in 1947, I believe. Shenandoah, which one was it? Shenandoah Waltz, that's it. And I bought this sealed, opened it up, and it's got something wrong with it. I don't know. It's got particles all in it. I cleaned it. Didn't do any good. It pops and crackles all the way through. So I found this from Philadelphia Records in very good plus condition, and it hopefully will play the way it should. The other one's unplayable. Here he is with Ramblin' Tommy Scott, early country favorites. This is on Old Homestead, as is that other. But Clyde Moody used to play the Bluegrass Festival around home. Sold mobile homes during the day. Appeared on Hummer Briarhopper's show early in the morning. Then sold mobile homes during the day, and then did concerts whenever they could get bookings. Okay, Charlie Moore and his Dixie Partners. That's on Old Homestead on a high mountain, and this is gospel bluegrass music. It's one of the acts that used to play bluegrass festivals around here back in the 70s. Again, I mentioned my series on brother duos. I picked up a couple more. Blue Sky Boys, there's the Precious Moments, the reissue on Pine Mountain as well. Then All Spirituals, Radio Station, Saved, Come to the Savior, The Promise of the Lord, the ABC song, Boat of Life. Blue Sky Boys, one of the groups I featured. And there's a Rounders reissue by Blue Sky Boys, The Sunny Side of Life. Also lost in the mold tragedy was this John Starling album I'd had since it came out, Long Time Gone. It's the artist I featured as a must-have record. I showed his other record. But I got this on DISCOGS, but it didn't play very well, very good minus. You have to be careful on DISCOGS. People don't know how to grade, or at least they grade on sight, on visual, and not listen. Which you can understand if you're selling thousands of records. And so you end up getting something that maybe looks like it's very good plus, but ends up not so good. So I got another one for next to nothing. Hopefully this one plays without any major pops, crackles, or surface noise. I had this CD. This is really good. Jimmy Murphy and the song he wrote called Electricity. The whole album is really good. Tony Williams is on the guitar. Jerry Douglas is on the dobro. Ricky Skaggs plays multiple instruments on here. And Jimmy Murphy plays the guitar, 6 and 12 string, and does all the lead vocals, including on the song he wrote, the title track there, which is really good gospel bluegrass sound. From out in California, got Country Gazette, Rolling White's Band, All This and Money Too. And transplanting, I guess is the right word, from California to Virginia were the Bluegrass Cardinals, and they've featuring Don Parmley and his son David Parmley, who took over the band after Don retired. Don was, I believe, was the Hillman, with Chris Hillman back in California. But this is on what's this, CMH? Yep, CMH, right there from probably the late 70s, recorded over at Arthur Smith Studios. And this is Home is Where the Heart Is, Bluegrass Cardinals as well. And notice everybody but the bass player has signed this one. This was on Sugar Hill Records. Why the bass player didn't sign it, I just don't know. He must have gone to the bathroom when they were signing the records when people bought them that day. I mentioned a lot about the bluegrass scene in the Metro District of Columbia area, Washington, D.C. area, Maryland and Northern Virginia. The Johnson Mountain Boys were a great example, and this is live recording at the Birchmere, and that is a major club in that area. I don't know if it's still in operation or not, but just a killer club. Another important bluegrass band from the mid-70s forward, Bill Harrell and the Virginians, major acts on the bluegrass circuit for many, many years. He used, in the 60s and early 70s, he was with Don Reno. What was Don Reno's band? Tennessee Cut-Ups, or Bluegrass Cut-Ups? I believe it was Tennessee Cut-Ups. But he was with Don Reno, and in the mid-70s he went out on his own with his own band, and there's 3 albums from him. They were the Virginians, but I believe he, for most of his adult life, was located in the suburban DC area in Maryland. And that's a great location for bluegrass to be based out of the DC metro area, because you can go up and do the club dates up in the Northeast, bluegrass festivals too up there, and you can go down to the Southeast and do the festivals and shows there. It gives you kind of a central location to run up and down the East Coast. Interstate 95 runs straight up there. You can get about anywhere you want from Florida to Maine on Interstate 95. The only disappointment as far as record quality, the Lost Gonzo band, if you remember Jerry Jeff Walker's band, sometimes in Texas. When I cleaned this one just now before I started the video, there's looks like a place where maybe the record got left beside a air duct for heat with heat on or something, and it's got just on about an inch into the record and about an inch length across on the outside of the record. It's got just a small little area like that. I doubt it'll play. I'll give it a try, but I mean, I only paid like $1.50 for this. I'll probably send them a message and let them know that one slipped by, because this was graded down at Very Good Plus, but I'm not going to fuss over that and give them a bad review or anything like that. If somebody just missed, they probably pulled their record out, and that part that had the wavy warp part was probably, they probably just pulled the record out, not all the way out, and just looked at it. Oh, it looks like Very Good Plus. Put it back in, and it looks like it if you don't see that just a little spot about that wide and about that far into the record on the outside. And last, I've got some latter day. I didn't realize I could even get this on vinyl. Laurie Lewis. Laurie Lewis is a fiddler. I believe he's kind of a modern day bluegrass, new grass maybe you might call it. Not beholden to every rigid rule to be traditional bluegrass. I think she's out of Berkeley, California, if I'm not. Some of you folks down in the San Francisco area that watch these things, maybe you can enlighten us. But I believe she's a California artist out of Berkeley. And I'd forgotten about these guys. The Wittstein or Steen, I don't ever know whether to say Steen or Stein. The Wittstein brothers, old time duets. This is on, well, that one's on Flying Fish, and this one's on Rounder. And somebody mentioned, commenting in one of my brother duos videos, commented about these guys, and I had forgotten about them completely. So I'm glad they reminded me. So when this popped up, this was sealed, by the way, and I got it for $1.69 or something like that, next to nothing. But that's a look at what I picked up in the month of April. Got some stuff coming from my local record store. Probably get here first of next week sometime. Looking forward to opening that up. Maybe I'll share that with you in another video. Okay, everybody take care. Remember, be kind to your neighbors, because we're all neighbors, no matter whether we live one house down or halfway around the world.